Great. I'm going to get started here. Welcome to the Energy Upgraded, Scaling Buildings Renovations for Decarbonization session. If you are applying for continuing education credits, you'll see the description and learning objectives here. We will follow up after the teach-in with an email asking you to complete a form so we can collect your member association numbers to help process your continuing education credits. We will be having a question and answer session at the end of this presentations. If we don't get to all the questions that come in through the Q&A box or the chat window through the Zoom platform, we will ask the presenters to submit written answers and we will post those on the CarbonPositive website post-teaching. So don't worry, all your questions will be answered. And this recording will also be available on the website as well. So my name is Vincent Martinez. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Architecture 2030. I am very pleased to have joined with me on this session two really innovators in their field. Olivia Allen, Sustainability Manager at Derwent London. Derwent is doing some really amazing targeting and decarbonizing their portfolio, what we're going to hear about from Olivia. And Celine, Carre, President of St. Gobain, who will be talking about the Renovate Europe program and the progress that's being made to scale up the renovation rate across the EU. So very pleased to have both of them. This is a really extremely important topic as we know that many of our existing buildings, a large majority of them will remain and need to be decarbonized if we're going to meet our climate reduction goals. So Olivia, I believe I have this in the wrong order. I think Celine's kicking this off if I'm correct. So Celine, you, oh no, yeah, that's correct, right? Celine, you're up first. You can feel free to share your screen and I'll spotlight you in the video.
Yes. Then I will go first. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you very well, thank you. And we
okay.
See transition in just needs
good. And you can see the screen correctly?
You're all set. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm actually not the president in Gobain. I'm head of public affairs, but thanks for this nice promotion for, for 1 minute. I will be talking today on behalf of the Renovate Europe campaign. And the idea is to explain a few promising models for renovating buildings in Europe. This is a major challenge today, and even more since yesterday, the President of the European Commission announced here in Brussels that the EU will accelerate on its climate commitment, moving to at least 55% reduction of greenhouse gas emission by 2030. So the building stock has a great role to play there. A few words about the Renovate Europe campaign and who we are. So the Renovate Europe campaign is a political communication campaign that started in 2011. We want to raise the profile and awareness of renovation. And today we have 45 partners, among which 17 in the different countries. This is very important because we want to mobilize locally, and also we want to share best practice example in renovation. What do we do and what are the objectives? We want to reduce the energy demand of the building stock by 80% by 2050, which implies accelerating drastically the rate of energy renovation. And we work with policymakers and at the European Union and also at local level. The reason for action basically lies in those two graphs that you can see on the left side. The one is the actual status of the building stock, of which we have learned that around 97% needs to be upgraded to be climate proof, because only 3% are in those little green bars, meaning that they would be A-class rated, fit for future challenges. The second reason for action is a very flat rate for renovation, which is about 1% per year in average in Europe. But most worrying is the very little amount of deep renovation. 0.2 is the average deep renovation in Europe, And this was demonstrated again in a latest study by Navigant done for the European Commission last December. So among action, this is an example of partnering with members of the European Parliament. You can see on the right our newest champion that were so the Parliament was renewed last year in May, and so we were restarting the champions. And I would like to insist that we work across the party. It is very important for us. And on the left, you can see postcards that we did in 2016, where we invited all the MEPs to tell us why energy renovation matter for them. These are also personal stories, and we want to hear from them, and these are stories that matter for constituents. And this is why those members of the European Parliament are also very valuable for our work. Another example of what we do is this exhibition in 2019. This was during the Renovate Europe Day, which is organized every year. And here we had around 30 best practice examples from a number of countries in Europe in various types of buildings. This was quite a successful exhibition, which was set to travel to other places. This has been a bit stalled due to less physical events happening right now, but I very much hope that our exhibition can further travel in 2020, 2021. So now moving to today's topic, I'd like to look at an energy renovation model from two angles. One is the segments, the different segments in the building stock, and one is the area-based approach. So in terms of segments, very briefly, I think it's good to have an idea of what we have to deal with in Europe, where we have over 3/4 of residential buildings. The bottom chart on the left shows you how they are spread across Europe. You can also see that the majority of the built floor space is split between Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and Poland for the biggest floor space. It's also important to know the ownership structure and whether it's single family or apartment block. So although we have a majority of single family houses in Europe, and this can mean over 80%, for example, in Ireland, or around 17 in the Netherlands. Some countries features of very high share of apartment block, which require also dedicated strategies. Those countries are, for example, Estonia, Latvia, or Spain. Importantly, on the little green chart, I'd like to raise your attention to energy poverty. It is estimated that between 50 and 125 million people in Europe cannot afford to keep a good thermal indoor comfort in the winter. And we are in 2020, this is not normal. And this is one of the reasons why we need to accelerate energy renovation in Europe. So now moving on to some of this example to the single family houses, because lots of work has already been done on them. And I would like to bring two examples of initiatives targeting this segment. Both are EU funded projects. The first one is called Innovate. This is a project that is running in 11 countries, among which Belgium, Netherlands, but also southern country, Italy or Spain, also Czech Republic. And the idea is to develop attractive packages that would embark and align and coordinate all of the actors around renovation. It has been found that although financial barrier is important, owners have other barriers like administrative or expertise, and we need to work on all of them in a consistent manner. And therefore, those projects try to answer the coordination gap, and also to boost demand, because it's very encouraging for people to renovate their house where all the neighbors in the street or in the district are doing it. And this is this kind of things that is being tried here. You can see here an example, and the truck in Denmark that was circulating in a neighborhood that led to 325 retrofit, and the partnership was also with local banks. Renobusta is the example in Austria. It started a bit more recently. They will have a test. They have a test phase this year with 40 houses. And for more insight, I would invite you to question also our Renovate partner from Austria, who is involved in the project. I would underline that in this project in Wien, they interviewed a target group to really understand their rationale to undertake renovation. Moving on, I'd like to introduce you to some example of successful schemes for targeting renovation in multi-apartment buildings. So you have two examples here, one in Latvia, one in Estonia. Renesco in Latvia is an energy service company, was one of the first one established with a collaboration between local, state and European bodies, including the European Investment Bank and the EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. From the beginning, they gathered the technical expertise, the legal expertise, and they had this international insight as well. And it was successful to renovate more than 15 multi-apartment blocks, and with a combination of technologies. So not only heat loss reduction, but also systems and controls were installed. Average savings were 54%. I will only mention the other example, and I would invite you to visit their website, Credex. They have a website also in English. Credex try to improve energy savings. They improve as well indoor climate, and the idea is to provide a building that would look as good as if it was a new dwelling, which is also a very attractive pitch for occupants. It started in 2001, and it has so far helped more than 100,000 of families to renovate their home. It has a very robust system involving technical assistance, loans, and guarantees. And you can see here more details, and you can check maybe on their website. On a public building, I would like to invite you to travel to Slovenia in Ljubljana, where this project of public-private partnership was developed in 2017 to refurbish nearly 50 public buildings like schools, kindergarten, health center, sports center. So it was seen as a very successful project in the region. Here again, you have a variety of measures that were implemented, from installation of roof and valve, integration of 55% of energy need for with renewable energy sources, new heating systems, also very importantly energy management system to maintain the savings and throughout occupancy as well. They had quite ambitious energy savings as well. You see here up to 85%. On this slide, you have a video you can check for further details. Now, the last segment I would like to introduce is social housing. Obviously, as you can imagine, the challenge of financing a renovation in social housing can be quite big due to the high investment costs that are faced with tight budget, and yes, and also some issues with involving all the tenants, the landlord-tenant dilemma, and sometimes you have a mixed tenure of tenants. Some of the projects have been really working on unlocking the threats, the perceived one and the real ones, and working on acceptance and satisfaction driver. But the example here was quite successful. It won a prize for contemporary architecture because it was really not just about energy saving, but also about enhancing the living conditions. So in this example of a building that was built in the 60s, they had over 500 dwellings renovated. And the innovation was to add prefabricated module to add winter gardens to each of the flat that would add a view, that would add a lot of daylight, and that contributed to increase the quality of living. Also important in this example that there was no need to move out during the renovation, and there was no rent increase, which is why this example was seen as very interesting in this segment. I will flag the Horizon 2020 project, which is currently ongoing because it is also trying to scale up renovation in this segment through cloud-based platform that would not only reach NZEP levels of renovation, but also promote advanced energy monitoring to optimize the energy use in post renovation. So you see here the pilots. Now we've seen a few examples from a segment base, and obviously it was not exhaustive due to lack of time. We could explore many more. But I'd like to introduce another angle for scaling up renovation, which is an area-based approach that has the benefits of involving all parties or doing a really good mapping in a city or in a region, and also consolidating communities through this approach of urban regeneration, for example. So an approach here is at city level. You see here examples from Padova in Italy, where the idea was really to expand and to build on the role of public authorities, because they are good to channel private finance into energy efficiency. And here again, you had the idea is to develop a one-stop shop, and the project is said to be expanded to Romania in Timisoara, and also to 2 cities in Bulgaria, Smolyan and Vidin. So we're waiting for further outcome of this very inspiring project. I would just flag example also in Madrid, which has been running the Madrid Recupera project for many years, 2016-17 already, where next to ambitious energy savings, an holistic improvement of also thermal and acoustic comfort has been encouraged. The plan was to be extended to the whole of Madrid. And I found also this interesting program in Ireland, the Fabric Upgrade program that has been running since 2013, and nearly 9,000 renovated units. And here they also had a combination of measures, and most of the buildings were brought from F to the C1 class, which is not, I would say, NZEB, near zero energy building yet, but it's already a good journey toward that goal. From a city, you can imagine to move to region, and here it's a program that has been running in France since 2013 at regional scale. So Hauts-de-France is in the north of France, as you can see on that little visual. And it started in 2013, and the idea has been to create a public service for energy efficiency, supporting renovation. So they had different phases, and in the latest one, they have consolidated the offer both for detached houses and for condominium. So the services run from accompaniment of owner, securing the financing support, and the support with the administration. For condominium, it can also be linked to engagement with a wider number of parties in the project, and helping face the regulatory obligations and the cost control. So the nice thing about this project is that it creates a sort of a journey for any homeowner, from a local one-stop shop to regional tools providing audits, for example, and then integration of each project at this Hauts-de-France and Picardy, so which is the region public service for energy efficiency. To date, 2019, and it's not the end of the project, you have over 600 houses renovated, 12 condominium, and quite a few companies have been involved, which has helped boost also local jobs and growth in the regions where it was a very important criteria for winning the project. So it's a virtuous circle for the local economy. I would also underline that so far the measured saving has been 45%. I like to challenge these examples because I believe that they can go much further, also in view of higher climate mobilization and clearer goal coming from French renovation strategy. So that was from city to region. The last example is to really scale up, I would say, at another dimension. And this is the idea of the program with EIT Climate Kick, which has analyzed that we should renovate in Europe 50,000 homes per day if we want to be on track with our targets. So we're not yet there. So the idea with this project is to run to have 100 of cities by 2024 running 10,000 renovation each. And really the project has identified the lack of orchestration of renovation as a key challenge. And the idea is to move on and organize from individual action to collective action, and from individual measures to integrated renovation. Integrated renovation, for which we have some examples like Energiesprong that has plugged prefabricated renovation to a number of buildings in a record time, also facilitating the building owner acceptance and of this project. But we know that this requires a number of things to be done. It requires new financing solution. It requires a supply chain that would be able to deliver productive and circular solution. It requires also citizens and community-centered approach. And I would finish with the policy and the governance, which is also very important because it can help align all of the actors on the same goal. So we're talking here about social, I would say even societal innovation to accelerate renovation. To finish, I would say that we have a few very promising examples demonstrating that tangible progress has been made in the recent 10 years on renovation, per segment, but also per area, city, regions, national level, and beyond. But this is not good enough, and it's required much more ambition to date. In less than a month's time, a major document is expected, communication is expected from the European Commission. We want it, it's called the Renovation Wave. We want this Renovation Wave to be big enough to motivate everyone in Europe to renovate. And for this, I would just quote the two first legs and the must-have of this Renovation Wave. It needs to have the financing sorted. And for that, we would hope a renovation management facility that would be the single interlocutor for all the projects that I have mentioned and many more. And it needs to have a good regulatory arm that would be fit for purpose. We need minimum standards for existing buildings in Europe. Otherwise, there is a distortion in terms of momentum. When all the good offers reach the owner, they don't know if they should or should not renovate. So I will close here, and I apologize for taking too much time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Celine. What a wonderful overview of everything that's going on Renovate Europe's campaign and the Renovation Wave to come. We hope it's a tsunami of a wave at the rate that we need to upgrade to. We're going to move on to Olivia now. Olivia, feel free to share your screen, and I will spotlight your video when it's on. Great, and we see your presentation and your video. You're all set to go.
Great. Hi everyone, my name is Olivia. I am a Sustainability Manager for Derwent London. So I'm going to talk a bit about our approach to net zero carbon and specifically our pathway document that we've developed over the last 6 or 7 months or so. But before I go into the presentation, it's probably worth giving me giving an overview of Derwent London. So Derwent is a London-focused real estate investment trust. So essentially we are a commercial property developer, investor and landlord as well. So we have a portfolio of approximately 80 buildings. As I say, we're very much London focused. So we have properties in, for those of you that know London, Mayfair, Fitzrovia, and then moving out towards Tech Belt, so Old Street in the east, up in Islington towards north, Paddington, in the west. And more recently, we've just purchased a building down in Brixton, which is our first property south of the river. So that's quite interesting. So we have portfolio value of about 5.6 billion. And my role within the business is very much focused on our net zero commitment. I started with Derwent back in January, so that's what I've been focusing on for the last couple of months. So as you can imagine, it's been quite interesting trying to develop a brand new strategy during lockdown and during COVID, but I think we've made some really good progress so far, which I'll take you through. Another thing to mention about Derwent actually is that essentially our business model is taking older, inefficient buildings and redeveloping them and repurposing them into more desirable, flexible, and essentially more efficient spaces and buildings. So actually we're really well placed to help improve the overall energy performance of London's building stock. And we do actually have quite a range of buildings within our portfolio as well. So we have everything from brand new BREEAM outstanding buildings all the way through to heritage buildings and pretty much everything in between. So that in itself creates a number of challenges in terms of our progress towards net zero, but I'll sort of go through those in a bit more detail now. So what have we been doing to date? So what's our progress so far with regards to net zero, and actually what does it mean to us as a business? So back in 2017, Derwent London set science-based targets to achieve net zero carbon by 2050. And these were verified with the STBI. And we were actually the first real estate investment trust to set and verify their own science-based targets. So early this year, early 2019, work began on a new net zero commitment. So essentially trying to achieve net zero carbon by 2030. So we've been working on this for well over or nearly 2 years now. Back in October last year, we signed up to the Better Buildings Partnership. So they are a consortium of other REITs, property investors, and other asset managers. So they're a group basically trying to improve the sustainability of the building stock that we have management control over. We signed up to their climate change commitment back in October last year. And what that meant is that we were then required as a signatory to develop a net zero carbon pathway and publish that at some point in this year, in 2020. So back in February, we announced our commitment to net zero carbon by 2030 publicly. And on the back of that, we published a very high level route map to show how we thought we were going to get to net zero by 2030 and the specific actions that we felt we needed to undertake to achieve that. In April this year, we provided some more detail on our approach and reiterated our commitment to net zero in our report and accounts, and also our responsibility report as well. So both of those are available on our website and provide a lot of information on our approach to net zero, but also sustainability more broadly. And we've also, again, publicly committed to net zero as part of our half-year reporting in August. So our net zero carbon pathway essentially provides a detail of how we plan to get to net zero. We started working on this document back in February, and this has been developed to align with the Better Buildings Partnership's net zero carbon framework, which they were developing sort of almost in tandem as we were putting together our pathway. So we worked quite closely with them over the last few months. It was really important for us as a sustainability team, who are obviously leading on this, to ensure that we engage with our executive committee, our heads of department, and also our net zero carbon committee as well. So in order to ensure that the actions that we were identifying to help us achieve this commitment were actually implemented, we realised that we're going to need buy-in from all areas of the business. It covers all aspects and activities that we undertake, and therefore it cannot be delivered purely by the sustainability team or investor relations team or whoever it might be. It really has to be a collaborative approach if we're going to achieve this. So all of these stakeholders, internal stakeholders, were consulted with as we were developing the actions and the detail of this pathway, and all of their feedback was incorporated into our approach. We also as I mentioned earlier, worked quite closely with the BBP and also Deloitte, who are our non-financial auditors as well. So something that was quite key to us is we wanted to be as transparent as possible in how we're approaching net zero and what the scope of our commitment actually was, and be transparent in our progress towards the targets and actions that we set as part of it. So we've worked with Deloitte for a while now on our, as I say, on our non-financial data assurance, and they've provided some critical review of this pathway as well. Ultimately, we presented this document to the main board for approval, and the document was then launched in July 2020, so a couple of months ago now. So again, that's available on our website. I encourage you to go and have a look at it and have a read of it. So here we've just got a couple of screenshots of what that looks like. So actually the colour scheme is very similar to the previous presentation, which wasn't actually planned, but a nice coincidence. I suppose something to say on the pathway document itself was that there's a lot of information in there, and actually the concept of net zero can be quite complex. And we were really conscious that we wanted this document to be digestible and easily understood by a variety of different audiences. So regardless of whether someone has previous understanding or knowledge or experience with sustainability or net zero, or not, we wanted this document to be able to provide enough information in the right way for everyone to understand exactly what our approach is all about and what we're trying to do. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the scope of our net zero commitment, because this is actually a really important aspect of the pathway and important to our approach in general. So there's a number of different organisations who talk about either carbon neutrality or net zero targets, but the scope of what they're including within those targets and within those strategies can vary quite significantly. So we wanted to look at all the activities that we undertake as a business and all the activities that require energy and emit carbon. And we wanted to be as all-encompassing as we could. So not only are we looking at emissions for activities where we have direct control, so essentially that's our landlord's electricity consumption, but we're also looking at our scope 3 emissions. So those are emissions from activities where we don't have direct control or management responsibility, but we do have a level of influence. And we felt that it was important that we incorporated these activities into our pathway and use that influence to try and reduce those emissions as much as we can. So our scope 3 emissions are from tenant energy consumption. So where the tenants are responsible for spaces within our building or potentially a whole building. The embodied carbon, so thinking about operational carbon from that perspective, but also thinking about the embodied carbon from our development pipeline. So as I mentioned earlier, we are a developer as well. So we will design and construct new commercial office buildings predominantly. And through that process, those buildings will incur and will emit, there will be embodied carbon from those construction projects. So this is quite a big focus for us as a business at the moment. We're really trying to understand how we can try and reduce that as far as possible, and actually how we can get better at measuring this as well. There is a fair amount of, or quite a big data gap with regards to embodied carbon, and there are a number of data sets out there which are used by industry, and we use them as well. But we're really trying to build up our own database from our own construction projects and really understand where the sort of hotspots are for embodied carbon, which materials have a higher intensity, and where can we look to reduce that, and what alternative materials can we target as well. So I'll talk about that in a bit more detail further on. We also incorporate emissions from water consumption, the waste that's produced in our buildings, and also from our business travel and staff commuting as well. Albeit that's been a relatively small activity over the last couple of months, but we will incorporate those emissions as we move forward. So I mentioned earlier that we have, in terms of our business model, we very much look to acquire older properties or buildings that are in need of renovation or refurbishment. And because of that, we thought quite carefully about how we consider those buildings within the scope of our net zero carbon pathway. So we've adopted a flexible and phased approach to new acquisitions. So this will allow us time to develop a plan and actually execute that plan for upgrading those properties with regards to energy efficiency, but also in terms of them being turned into more desirable and better spaces that tenants will want to occupy. And also, importantly as well to mention is that we are including properties from our managed and unmanaged portfolio. So again, this goes back to the point around influence. We have a number of buildings that are purely managed by our tenants, so we don't have any direct control over how they operate. And historically, this has actually been a bit of a gap in our understanding, actually, from an energy management and energy impact perspective. So we will be looking to engage with tenants from those properties to really try and understand how they operate, what is their energy demands like, what efficiency measures are in place or not, as the case may be, and actually what is the overall carbon impact of that element of our portfolio, which we're just not really sure of at the moment. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the specific actions that we are planning to undertake as part of this pathway. And these relate to all aspects of the business, but essentially we're going to be focusing on, as a priority, reducing the energy demand across our portfolio and also our development pipeline as well. So when we were developing our pathway, we took sort of, or identified 5 key principles that we used to then inform the development of our pathway and also the actions that we were going to be undertaking. So we thought if we want to have sort of integrity in our approach, then actually reducing energy demand and carbon emissions is the first thing that we need to do. So we really need to change how we operate as a business in the first instance before we take sort of other steps after that, which I'll talk about in a sec. So the first action here is around DFP. So this is a pilot scheme that the Better Buildings Partnership are operating, and it's the purpose of it is to try and reduce the energy performance gap between the design process and the actual operation of new buildings. And this is an inherent problem across the industry. Buildings are designed to achieve a certain level of energy efficiency, but actually in reality, they often don't perform to that standard. They're performing at a lower efficiency. And that's for a number of different reasons, through sort of building management processes, through incorrect commissioning of metering and building management systems, through sort of changes to heating and cooling systems in tenant fit outs. There's a number of different reasons why buildings don't often perform in the way that they were designed to. So the Design for Performance scheme sets out a methodology to try and eliminate or reduce that problem. And essentially it requires or enhanced energy modelling at the design stage. And through that modelling, we look to identify different options or recommendations to further improve the building performance through the design stage and specification stage. But following on from that, or at that point, we will then set a operational energy intensity rating or a star rating under the Design for Performance scheme. And through setting that rating, we then follow that through all the way through construction. So actually having requirements within our contractor agreements that they will need to ensure that certain infrastructure is put in place, that it's commissioned correctly to help us achieve that star rating that we've targeted. And then also that rating is then fed through to our lease agreements and also our building management strategy as well. So essentially it's looking to have a whole life approach to setting energy targets and operational energy efficiency. So that's something that we're trialling on one of our projects at the moment. The Design for Performance scheme is due to be launched towards the end of this year, and we'll be looking to apply this methodology to all of our new developments moving forward. For our new schemes as well, we're specifying all electric heating and cooling systems. So we're targeting these systems to try and reduce the carbon intensity of our new buildings. Essentially, the electrical grid is decarbonised obviously a lot quicker than gas has, due to the contribution of renewable energy projects and technologies. So we'll be mandating that as a standard for all new buildings. But really the challenge here is actually how do we look to retrofit those systems into our existing portfolio. As I mentioned earlier, we have a variety of buildings within that portfolio, with various different tenants, different types of MEP systems. So the new developments are essentially, they're quite straightforward. We look at the new technologies that are available, we brief our design teams, we specify this kit. We're starting from fresh essentially. But where we're looking at existing buildings, that's really where the challenge is. There are a number of considerations that we need to take into account when we're looking to either retrofit to all electric heating and cooling systems, or looking at energy efficient measures more generally. So we've commissioned a couple of pieces of research over the last few years by some of the consultants that we work with quite regularly to review each property within our portfolio and actually assess those properties against a number of different considerations, and identify the ones which are most suitable for retrofitting to all electric systems, so essentially removing gas supplies from those buildings. So we've taken that information and we've mapped that against various other things that we need to think about, and predominantly this is around when or if we will get vacant possession of a building to actually undertake these works, and actually is there a way that we can do these works while tenants are still in situ. So we have to essentially look at when...
I hate to interrupt you, I just want to let you know we are over time. And so the other sessions are starting for the last sessions of the teach-in. Didn't want to interrupt you, wanted to make sure you got as many points as you possibly could. But if you could have some final points, I think we're going to have to wrap the session.
Yeah, no problem. So we basically tried to identify which properties are going to be most suitable for all electric retrofit, but we need to consider that in the context of the business and how that operates. So that's actually the big challenge for us on a very practical level. I will just quickly run through the other action points. So we actually have an estate up in Scotland, and we're exploring opportunities for self-generation of renewable energy, so solar PV and turbines up there. We're also looking at methodologies for carbon accounting, and as I mentioned earlier, reducing the embodied carbon of our development pipeline. We are setting or developing suitable energy benchmarks for all of our new schemes and existing portfolio, as I mentioned earlier, with Design for Performance. And really importantly as well, we're trying to enhance our programme for ongoing tenant engagement. So again, thinking about how our buildings operate and trying to drive down the energy demand of our existing portfolio, and that is such a key part of our overall approach. And finally, there will always be an element of carbon that we just cannot eliminate out of our, that we just can't eliminate, and that's due to the nature of our business. So in that instance, we will have to invest in carbon offsets to achieve that net zero carbon commitment that I mentioned earlier. I will skip over that bit. I'll just finish it on some of the challenges that we found. So considering what the impact of retrofit and net zero carbon more generally is on our business model, particularly around acquisitions, balancing some of our expectations of our internal and external external stakeholders, really trying to communicate quite a complex subject to different groups and to lay audiences. And keeping up with evolving guidance approaches and technologies. There's a lot of information out there at the moment, so we're really trying to work out what is most relevant to us as a business and what's really going to support us in our journey. Just a bit on final opportunities. So through this commitment, we're looking to increase the resilience of our portfolio to climate change, meet changing stakeholder demands, so demand from our investors, tenants, planning authorities and wider communities, reduce our exposure to transitional risk, and explore new technologies that can help improve the energy efficiency of London's building stock and our own portfolio. To finish, so our commitment to net zero, it's bold, it's very ambitious. There are going to be many challenges along the way, and it will be an evolving approach for sure, but it's absolutely necessary for us as a business and in the wider context of climate change. So I think that is, that's everything from me. If anyone's got any questions and we've got time, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Olivia, and thank you, Celine, for some great presentations. I'm sorry to rush you there at the end, Olivia. Such great points that you were hitting, but we did go over time, so I just wanted to make sure the attendees understand that this last sessions of the day have already started, and you'd go back to the CarbonPositive agenda website if you want to join any of those. We can remain on the line here for as long as we need to, and I appreciate it that Celine answered one of the questions that came in for her on the Q&A. But I think probably because most folks are dropping off for the other sessions, that we'll just take any questions via email and then share them with the two presenters. So I wanted to thank you both. Really wonderful presentations. Celine, thank you so much for giving us an overview of what's going on with the renovation waves that we hope to expect here in the EU and what's happening in each of the member states. It's really inspiring to see the different typologies being affected, the co-benefits that are happening there. And Olivia, your presentation and the work that Derwent's doing is absolutely essential, and wonderful that you're leading the way with private sector leadership and decarbonizing your stock. Really appreciate you sharing your plans and actions that you're undergoing, as well as the challenges that you're facing. So I want to thank you both for a very informative presentation, and remind folks that this will be available online, and we are partnering with the World Green Building Council to get this information out to a broader audience over the next number of months as we move towards the COP26 agreements next year. So thank you both again.
Thank you.
Thank you.